Hey guys, I'm Chantel Ray, and I want to share with you 15 tips on how to grow and scale your business. I'm actually in Hawaii right now filming this, and we're doing it via Zoom, but I and our company have grown and scaled our real estate company to over 7 locations, over 200 agents and employees, and over 13 million in sales. We've been on Inc. 5000's fastest growing company every year we've been in business. So Heather Roemmich and I, she is our COO, and we're going to share with you our 10 best tips and tricks of what you need to do to scale and grow your business like we have. So Heather, let's get this started.
All right.
Well, my first tip is about responsibility. And there's a saying that says, if everyone is responsible, then no one is responsible. What does that mean to you?
This is such a good one. And a lot of people that are listening to this may be saying, like, what in the world are they talking about? Because everyone is responsible. But sometimes, like when we have multiple people working on a project or a task, or like in a certain area of our company, and we don't clearly define their roles, that's where the responsibility kind of gets mixed up. So let me give you an example. So like I manage our web department here, and we have some really super talented people. Well, we have 2 guys who I looked at them and I was like, hey guys, you guys are responsible for the website. So anytime something needs to get taken care of, like just make sure it's done. And so I'd send them a task and I would send it to them to get done. And then when it wasn't finished, I would go back and say like, you guys, you're responsible for making sure this change happened. And what they would both do is look at each other and be like, oh, I thought you were handling it. And so what I should have done, and where this saying really comes into play, is I should have told one of them, you're responsible for front-end development and you're responsible for back-end development. Because I made it too broad, they never had clearly defined responsibilities. And so it was always like, oh, I thought you were taking care of it. I thought you were taking care of it. And I just needed to give them that specific responsibility. Like, so what about you, Chantel? Has this happened to you before?
Yeah, and it's really just that pointing fingers game, because it was like, I thought you were doing it. I thought you were doing it. But I have 2 different assistants, and I know you're thinking, wow, big problems. You have 2 assistants. But one takes care of my business, and one takes care of more of our marketing, and one helps with accounting and HR. So they do have different roles. But when I used to meet with them at the same time, I would kind of assign them tasks, and was kind of having them split them up, and that just didn't work. I needed to meet with each person separately, and each person needed to know exactly what did winning look like. So I basically changed it where I said, okay, you're responsible for A, B, and C. You're responsible for C, D, and E. So when it comes to those areas, if anything falls through the crack on these for C, D, and E, I'm holding your feet to the fire. If anything happens with A, B, and C, I'm holding your feet to the fire. And then I made it really clear, like, we had an inbox. There was one inbox with things that I'm doing with Chantel Ray Way. And it was questions at Chantel Ray Way. And there was 2 people who were responsible for that email box. Well, there were all kinds of emails missing. Finally, I said, no, you're responsible for all questions at chantelrayway.com. That is my company that I do all my weight loss stuff out of. And so with that, I said, you're now responsible. And on top of that, I need every email responded to within an hour, maximum 2 hours. And so then it was like, okay, as soon as I did that and I made it clear, now they knew this is my responsibility, and we had no more issues or problems.
Yeah, that's so good. All right, what's tip number 2?
Yeah, so tip number 2 is accountability. And I believe everyone needs accountability. And Heather, what I'd love for you to do is I'd love for you to share your screen if you can. And I'd love for you to kind of show how we do these commitments if you can.
Okay.
So basically, if you think about it, even LeBron James, who my son has he's got his jersey and he loves LeBron James. So LeBron, if you're listening.
Kyle
Kyle Finch is my son. He'd love one that's autographed. But he has a trainer that he meets with to help him, to make him better, faster, and to keep him accountable. He has a coach. There's no person that doesn't have, that's super highly successful, that doesn't have a coach. So when people say, you know what, I don't need accountability, I don't want accountability, what they're really saying is they don't want anyone holding them accountable, and they're not having anyone move the needle forward. So you have to hold yourself accountable, but you mostly need someone else in addition to help them hold them accountable and have them grow. So Heather, will you talk about 3 commitments that we have each person do each week?
Sure, sure. So one thing that we implemented that we found is that we have each of our team members, and this is across the board. This is from everything from managers down to our agents. They make 3 commitments. And so like our team, like our employees, they make 3 commitments each week. And these are 3 tasks that they're going to complete, that they're committing to. And they have to be tasks that are moving the needle forward in their position. So for example, if someone tells me, like an agent example might be, sometimes they would make one of their commitments to say, I'm going to study for my continuing education. And I would look at them and say, you definitely have to do that to keep your license active, but that's not a commitment. I need you to make income producing commitments. What are you going to do to move your needle forward? And so each of these commitments, they have a goal, and then they have action steps. And they have to be SMART goals. They have to be specific, they have to be actionable, they have to be measurable. And so, for example, like our managing partners in our offices, they meet with agents one-on-one every single month. So they have a one-on-one session with them to help grow their business. And so like one of their commitments for the week might say, I want to complete 10 agent one-on-ones by Friday, by scheduling one-on-one times with the agents by Monday at 10 a.m. And so what it is it's saying what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. And then that way when we go around and check with them and we can say, hey, did you meet with your 10 agents? They'll either say, yes, I did it, and they did a great job. Or if they say no, then we look at the action step and we say, well, did you get everybody scheduled by Monday at 10 a.m.? And then that's where we find where they didn't do that action step. And it's either the action step just wasn't like strong enough. If they say, yeah, I did my action step, but it didn't give me the results I wanted. So then we have to tweak the action step to make sure it gets them there. Or they didn't do it because they didn't have enough grit and like oomph to get it done. And so a lot of times in that situation, I'll say, if I would have given you a bonus of $1,000, would you schedule them? And 99.999% of the time they'll say, well, yeah, I would have. And so it helps instill that in them. And, but I think a key to this is we have to check in like halfway through the week to see where they're at. Because what happens is if we wait till the very end and they're like, no, I didn't hit it, we're way too far behind the 8 ball at that point. And I want to help identify obstacles before they miss their commitments each week. So I can help coach them through halfway through. So those are kind of the 3 commitments that we do and how we kind of coach them through it and how they come to those different like commitments and ideas.
So good. Well, and I think the other piece is assigning them an accountability partner who can check in with them every day, encourage them, and it starts to create self-motivation because they don't want every time their accountability to call for them not to be having their commitments done. And we do these stand-ups that is when you're in a group, it's not just one-on-one. People don't, a good thing is to do teams as well. So you do like team A and team B. And we need to go back to that. We did that for a while. And we need to add that back in to go, okay, you guys are team A, you guys are team B, and there's a reward at the end. And it doesn't have to be huge.
Right.
It could just be something small. It could be like, we're bringing in Chick-fil-A for all of you guys, at the end of the month, whoever, wins. But kind of having that, the contest and the fun, accountability partners really help with that.
Yeah, and the group accountability kind of helps people keep themselves accountable because most people don't want to go into the group every week and not have done it because they're putting peer pressure, kind of on themselves. And that brings me to, we're going to talk about tip number 3, which is, do you have the right people in the bus? And are they in the right seats? And a lot of times as our businesses are scaling and growing, we have to continually look at which seats are open on our bus because sometimes we have to change those. And so like if we have someone who's consistently not hitting their commitments each week, moving that needle forward, this might be a sign that the right person is not in the right seat.
Yeah, and in the book, where we got this from is in the book Good to Great. And Jim Collins basically has this metaphor, and he compares a business to a bus, and the leader is the bus driver. And he says it's absolutely crucial to ask first who, then what. Like, you're the bus driver. The bus, your company is at a standstill, and it needs you to kind of get it going. And so you have to be, if you are a leader, you have to be rigorous in the selection process. Like, a lot of times what happens is you've got a hole and you're like, oh my gosh, we got to fill it. We got to fill it. We got to fill it. And you just go, psh, let's just fill it. And you're not creating a systematic tool that says, okay, what are we doing in the interview process? What are we doing for reference checks? What are we doing for the background check? How are we testing them? Like, we have a 3-hour trial. Heather, will you talk about that for just a second to make sure of this is, I think, one of the biggest things that we've done, and it's worked 90% of the time.
Yeah. So basically what happened was, like, when we were very first starting 12 years ago, we had a person come in for an admin position. And so we asked them all the standard questions, you know, on a scale of 1 to 10, how well are you on computer skills? How well do you rate yourself on this? And they're like, 10, 10, 10, 10. I'm amazing. I'm amazing. We're like, oh, great. And so they had worked at this other position for a really long time. And, you know, model employee. And so we were like, yes, we're going to hire you. So we bring them on. They quit their job that they loved, but they were looking for something a little different, and had been there forever. And they come. And so we're on day one. They're here where they're hired. And about 2 hours in, we go over like, how is it going? They're like, great. I do have one question. How do you save this? How do I save something to the desktop? And we were like, oh my gosh, you're like a 1 out of 10 on technology. And so unfortunately, like, this person had quit a job that they'd been at for a really long time and just like left all of that behind. And they weren't really at the levels that we needed them to be. And so we were like, we don't want to make this mistake again. So what we did was we created the 3-hour trial. So after we've interviewed someone, we asked them to take 3 hours off, and it's easy for someone to get 3 hours, and they come with us and they actually do like some sample task during that 3-hour trial where we get to work with them. We get to kind of test their skills, test their knowledge. We get to see what they're like to work with. They get to see what we're like to work with. It's not paid. It's part of the interview process. And this has just helped make sure we don't make those silly mistakes. So we can easily tell in 3 hours how quick someone is, how tech savvy they are. If that position requires specific skills, we can tell if they have them. And it has really been a game changer in our hiring process. And it really has helped us kind of filter through good candidates, great candidates, and candidates that we really should not hire.
Yeah. And when in doubt, you just do not need to bring the person on the bus.
Right.
Like, you need to let a seat go unfilled and just take on a little extra work at that time until you found the right person. And that is, we've made that mistake tons of times where we're just like, you know, we've been interviewing and we're just like exhausted. We're like, well, this is the best guy. He's not great, but he's the best that we found so far. And that is the wrong attitude. You've got to make sure that you're getting the right people and that they're outstanding, not just okay.
Yeah.
And getting the right people in the right seats. So like, they might be the right person, but it's like, for me, if you had me be your admin, we'd be all in trouble because I hate details. I hate doing all that stuff. So I'm the right person, but I might be in the wrong seat. And so that would be the second one, and the second piece of that. But also the hardest piece is to get the wrong people off the bus.
Yeah.
Because, you know, we had to make a really hard change this year. We had somebody who'd been with our company from the beginning. I mean, literally from the beginning, like, you know, 14 years, something like that they'd been with us. And, you know, once we knew we needed to make that change probably 2 years before it actually needed to happen. And, you know, you have to help people exit the company with dignity and grace so that people, you know, have positive feelings about it. But sometimes you just have to make that decision. And it's just so hard sometimes to do it, but you have to rip the Band-Aid off. And you might need to say, like, do an assessment and decide, do I even need these people that we have. So we at one time hired a bookkeeper, and we were paying $80,000 a year for this bookkeeper. And we realized that we just didn't need that seat. Like, we decided to make the technology so good that we didn't need a bookkeeper to do that. We needed someone who was just almost data entry, that was more at the $15 to $16 around, price range. And that saved us a lot of money. And one way to figure out if you have the right people on the bus is to ask the question, is there anyone in your organization currently working for you that you wouldn't rehire? Like, if they came in and reapplied, would you rehire them? And if the answer is yes, that you wouldn't rehire them, this is a big red flag. Like, you need to look at them and say, okay, they either need to be coached, they need to be warmed, or they need to be moved on. Like, either coach them up. We have a saying, like, either coach them up or coach them out. And I know that sounds harsh, but if you wouldn't rehire them, why do they still work for you?
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard. It is really hard. And, a lot of times we'll have people that are really hard workers, but they're just not kind of getting the job done. Their productivity is low.
One of those people.
Yeah.
Like we need to go over, we need to show that chart. But
yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so there's a chart that you can do. And so on one axis, you're going to put productivity. And on one axis, you're going to put your core values. And so there's 4 quadrants that you're going to do. There's one that has high productivity, high core values, one that has high productivity, low core values, one that has low productivity, low core values, and one that has high productivity or low productivity but high core values. And we'll put the chart here up on the screen. But what that means is, like, if you have somebody who does high productivity and high core values, A player, keep them, replicate them, mold them. I mean, they are people you want to keep because they get production done and they just exude everything you want your culture to be. And then you have people who are low productivity and low culture. If you have somebody like that, today needs to be their last day. They are culture killers. They are cancer. They are toxic. You've got to get them out of your organization. They're not doing anything, and they're making everyone around them miserable. So they got to go. So then you're left with the hard other 2 quadrants. Those are easy. Keep, go. These 2 quadrants are really, really difficult. Difficult is people who have low productivity but high core values. Like, you love them. They are everything that your culture exudes. They uphold every one of your core values. You just can't get them moving the needle forward. And so you don't want to let go of them because they're really great. So what you want to try to do is coach those people to the high productivity, high core value quadrant. And so you want to
say something about that.
Yeah.
So we had someone like that was like that. Like, they were amazing for our culture. They just couldn't get the job done. You could give them a goal and they would just never achieve them. But everybody in the organization loved them. And we just kept holding them accountable until the point they said, you know what? I can't. They came to us and said, I just can't really do this job. You know what I mean? So instead of us letting them go, they ended up letting themselves go.
Yeah, and so you'll either coach them over to where you put them in the right position where they are like they are having high productivity, they're moving your company's needle forward, but they're still, obviously they're such a great core value person, or that example will happen. The hardest group is someone who is a high producer but has low core values. They might be they might be your top salesperson. They might be somebody who is literally just crushing it, and they bring in a lot of revenue for your company. But on the other end, every one of your core values, they literally just don't have any regard for them. And so those are hard because they bring you money, so you don't want to let them go. But they are also killing everyone else's production. And your high producing, high core value people look at you and are like, why do you still have that person here? They are just killing everyone around you. And so we had a situation where we had one of those. We had like a high producing agent, and they were like, they made like 3 times, they brought in like 3 times more money than the next highest producing person. They were crushing it, but they made everyone else around them miserable. And so like people weren't coming into the office. It had just gotten really bad. And so we finally had to make the decision that person just couldn't stay here anymore. And what happened was, when that person was no longer here, everyone else around them's productivity increased because they felt this huge, they could come back in the office. They felt this huge like lift off the culture. And so a lot of times when you're holding on to that person, even though that one person's bringing you in a lot of production, they're actually inhibiting a lot of other production. And when they go, even though you lose that little bit, everyone else increases and your production starts to rise. And so those are hard to let go of, but you've got to get your mindset right to make sure that everyone else around is also able to rise up.
Great. Now, tip number 4 is about strategy. And you need a strategy, and then you need to execute. And your strategy needs to fit on one page. Like I know in the beginning, we just made everything so complicated.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, as the years have gone, we've just simplified and simplified and simplified. But when we talk about strategy, so tip number 4 is really getting a strategy, but keeping it simple.
Yeah.
And when we need to execute, we need to ask, are we doing it right? So let me give you an example. So in football, I love the Redskins. Heather, who do you love?
Well, I'm more of a college football person, but I would say NFL, we typically go for the Seahawks.
My son loves the Seahawks.
I know.
So, well, in football, they come up with about 5 plays that they know that they're going to do in the beginning of the game. But as the game starts to progress and develop, their strategy has to start making changes. So like you see them in the, with the microphone and they're like, they're adjusting. They come in with a game plan, but you have to adjust. And sometimes people just go, well, here's my game plan, and they never adjust. So, for example, our marketing budget at one point was really about $100,000 that we were spending in advertising. And, as a month. And it was insanity. And we just didn't need to spend that much. And we needed to go, okay, well, if we drop it down to 50,000, are we still going to get that less number of leads? And it was like, no, we weren't. And so we needed to kind of bring it down to 50,000. You might need to say, look, sales are down. We might need to move it down to 30,000 in marketing or whatever it is. I mean, our marketing budget's huge, but whatever you need to change it to. Heather, is there an example you can think of?
Yeah. So, we get to visit a lot of other real estate companies. And so we visited this one real estate company and they were telling us about their training. And so they were like, okay, this is our training platform. What they do is like, once you launch with them, then they send a trainer to your office 2 months after you launch for in-person training. Then they have the trainer come every few months to do more in-person training, but there's like these gaps, that are happening. And what ends up happening is we all know that because we have to kind of do this adjust and strategy change, you have to create new training on the spot because you have new systems and you can't keep waiting another 2 months for a trainer to come and conduct in-person training. Like that just doesn't even make sense. You have to be able to adjust, especially in a market like real estate that changes all the time, that you have to be able to adjust regularly. And so looking at that system, we were just like, this is insane. There's no way that you can wait 2 months for someone to come back out and retrain you on something that's changed 1 month and 29 days ago. And so you just have to kind of look at your systems and say, okay, am I able to kind of tweak this and move it on the spot? And your strategies, because as things change, you have to be able to be in a position where you can make that little tweak right then. Otherwise, your people are going untrained. They're going on this old strategy, and you're never going to be able to get it move forward.
We need to contact that company again, and we need them pronto, our marketing company, to do a video training platform. We need to write that down and get them to do that right away.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing, when you've got a company that is nationwide, you only have 2 strategies. You have to go in person and train the trainer at that location, and then that new trainer trains everyone else. That's option 1. Or option 2, you do virtual training where it's all either live, like on a Zoom call, or you're doing it in a video training platform, which video training platform, if somebody is a perfect example, if you're paying somebody to literally say the same thing over and over and over again, why not video it and then have people do video training? That's That's an option. So we're
Yeah.
on number 5, which is our core promise. What is yours? And you need to make sure that you have this in mind every time you're making a decision. So let me tell you what a core promise is. Let's talk about Southwest Airlines. I love Southwest Airlines. They're one of my favorite. But their core promise is low fares, lots of fun, and lots of flights. And in order to achieve this, they have based their entire company around it. So they only fly, talk about simplicity, they only fly one type of plane back and forth to the same airports. They don't have so many delays because they don't do a lot of connections. And since they have one type of plane and they have, all these systems the same, think about like when they have one plane, if the plane breaks, they only need to fix, they're so used to fixing that plane, and they have the same parts, they have them in stock. They don't have to have, okay, well, we have the 747, then we have the 737, then we have the 777. It's just, it gets them to be able to scale and have that flywheel going. Every time you have a different system and process, up, we've got this, up, we've got to move to this. And the way that you grow is to have things simple so that you have that flywheel going.
Yeah. Yeah. So our core promise is that you're never stuck in a long-term contract. And basically, it's such a great one for our customers because it's all about customer experience. It's why, you founded the company. It all centers around that. And so basically, if they don't like the customer service that they're getting from us, at any time they can fire us. So if their house is listed and it doesn't expire for another 4 months, and we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing, they're not getting showings, we're not responsive, they can literally call us up and say, withdraw it. And we do it without batting an eye, because that is how much we know we're going to provide great customer service, that we can have that. And at every other real estate company out there, that's not the case. They would say, you're in a contract with me for 4 more months. Yep. Like, sorry. And so basically, every decision that we make is based on this, like, what is our customer promise? What's our core promise? Our core promise is to make sure our agents feel like they're never stuck. So they know, when they hear that, they know that we're going to provide great customer service because we don't want them leaving. And they know if we don't, they can leave. And so it's really, really important. And so all of our agents make all the decisions. They go out throughout the day with these clients based around that one core promise.
Yeah. So let's talk about tip number 6.
Tip number 6 is you have to have a 3-HAG. So 3-HAG means it's a 3-year hairy, audacious goal. And so basically, this can be a little daunting, especially if you're newer and starting a business, to say, oh my gosh, I don't know where I want to be in 3 years. But what you want to do is you want to get 3 to 5 of your top people together and figure out and say, like, what is our 3-HAG? What do we want to look like in 3 years? And then once you figure that out, then you start to back it up. So, okay, if we want to get there in 3 years, what do we need to do each year? And then in order to do that each year, to get to that yearly goal, what do we need to be doing each quarter? And then basically for each quarter, what do we need to do each month to get to the quarter? So you take that big one and then you just kind of back it up, back it up, back it up. And then everyone knows each month what they need to achieve to hit the quarterly goal, the yearly goal, and then to hit that 3-year goals. So one thing that we do at our company is we'll get together and we'll do retreats or brainstorming days, or we've done everything from going from lunch to dinner to breakfast. Like, we eat our way through a leadership day. But we did this one really, really super fun retreat that we made up one of our 3-HAGs. And so Chantel, I know you remember that retreat. Can you tell us what that process looked like? And so someone can kind of wrap their brains around how to make your 3-HAG.
Yeah, and first I want to say, I want to explain what a BHAG is.
Mm-hmm.
Because for those of you who haven't heard of it, Jim Collins and Jerry Forrest famously coined the term big, hairy, audacious goal. And then known by the popular acronym, which is BHAG. And that was in a book called Built to Last. And so the BHAG was such a long-term stretch goal, and it was clear and compelling and engaging for everybody. But the problem is that it's so big that there's another lady, I think her name is Shannon Susko,
Mm-hmm.
and she is the one who authored 3 hag, and she's saying like, okay, you need the 3 hag before you can get the B hag. So basically, yeah, with our retreat, one of our goals that we set was to close 2,000 transactions per year. And in order to have 2,000 transactions, we said, okay, well, what are we going to do that? And one of it was to hire more agents to close more transactions. So we broke up into groups and came back and figured out how many agents we needed to do that. So we worked our way backwards. So we said, okay, if each agent was going to do X number of transactions, and then you just work backwards to be able to do that.
Yep.
All right, let's move on to tip number 7. And that is to find out what you are unique at. And so when you try to scale and grow your business, most people think that you need to just be like the jack of all trades. And instead, you need to find out what you are unique at. And that avoids competing with rivals on the same platform. Like you need to say, go on a whiteboard and go, okay, what makes us unique? Heather?
Yeah. So one thing that makes us unique with our company is we decided that, what was kind of missing from what our competitors were doing was there's a lot of times you're calling agents, but they don't answer the phone because they're with a client, or they are, doing a showing, or they're on vacation, or they just don't work after this time at night. And so what we decided was we were like, okay, we're going to be unique. And what we're going to be unique as we're going to have a live agent from 8 to 9 every single day to make sure our clients never, ever miss a showing call. So even if one of our agents, even if their listing agent is meeting with another client, we have a live agent that takes the call for that to make sure that they don't miss a showing, they don't miss a question on it, they don't miss a client coming in. It's all taken care of. And so that was really important for us in our industry because that's something that wasn't happening. And that was a key frustration for clients, was that they try to call an agent wouldn't call them back, agent took 2 days to call them back. It was a big problem. So even after hours, nobody ever leaves a message. We don't have any voicemail set up. It all goes to a live person. So even after hours.
I want to say, you guys have tried to get me to do voicemail for so long. Like, not that you voicemail, but you'd be like, can we at least have, number, like press 1 for this, press 2 for that. And I'm like, no, that's what makes us unique, is that nobody goes to a voicemail.
Yeah, they don't go to a voicemail. They don't do a calling tree. Like if you know your party's extension, like we do not do that. It literally goes to a live person every single time. During 8 to 9 and after hours, we have a live person that answers the phone. So this is like super unique because you don't have that frustration of either having to leave a message and waiting to hear back, or I don't know my party's extension. I'm trying to push 0 to get to the operator. Like none of that. And Chantel's right. We've tried over the years, but no, that goes right to a live person. We have a 5-ring policy. They answer. And so that way the person on the other line gets right to who.
This is Chantel.
Do you want to pay as little as $4,000 to your real estate company
and get rewarded ownership shares just by being a top agent?
At Chantel, when you're a top agent, you're known as an influencer.
You'll get $10,000 back in ownership shares once you hit your cap, meaning $4,000 net dollars to the company. You're on an 80-20 split until you reach your cap, and then move to 100% commission for the rest of your anniversary year. Did you know that you can earn up to $150,000 or more in passive monthly revenue from bringing people to the company? And the more people you recruit, the more your passive income can increase and even multiply. You can also get a top CRM and lead generation system with KV Core, Brokerment for paperless transaction management, BrokerBuck back office platform that ties all systems together, and a breakthrough marketing center that takes 3 seconds to create beautiful marketing materials that feed automatically from the MLS. There's also no franchise fees, no desk fees, no monthly technology fees. You can work from anywhere in the US. The possibilities for growth are endless. Download a free audiobook, 15 Tips to Grow and Scale Your Business at joincanzel.com.
This is Chantel.
All right, so tip number 8 is to have leading indicators versus lagging indicators. So you need to have a leading indicator to support your lagging indicator. It's like driving a car. Like your lagging indicator is looking in your rear view window. So that would be like looking at last month's profit and loss. And your leading indicator is the 1 foot on the gas. And so you need to be looking at things of what is going to be moving the needle forward. And let's think about FedEx, for example. They have a giant clock on their wall that shows how many packages they have left until the plane leaves. So everyone on the floor sees where they are at any given time so that they're all working on the same goal. And so a lot of times people would say things like, give an example, Heather, of a leading indicator versus a lagging indicator.
Yeah. So basically, like, a lot of people think that their leading indicator, it's really their lagging indicator. So for example, for us, it would be how many closings do we have on the books? How many closings did we have last month? Even how many closings do we have on the books this month? That's a lagging indicator because so many things had to happen for that closing to actually get on the books. So like that itself is even, what's the leading indicator is how many contracts got ratified. And so what you need to do is you need to figure out, when you look at a lagging indicator or what you think could be a leading indicator, say, is there something else that has to happen to get to that? Is there something else that has to happen that gets to that? Because you'll work your way back and realize what you thought was your leading indicator is actually your lagging indicator. And so I think that's what's really important is once you find that, and as you start to do this next process I'm going to talk about, you'll start to see, ooh, I thought that was a leading indicator, but it's really a lagging indicator. I need to get one step in front of it because you want to drive the behaviors that will get you to the end goal. And what's really, really important is you have to have scoreboards. You have to have things up in your offices, like FedEx, that's a great thing they do because at any given time, at any point in the warehouse, everyone can look at it and say, oh, yep, we're ahead of schedule. Nope, we're behind schedule. We've got to work faster. They can see that at all times. It's visible to every single person. And so you need to have scoreboards in your office up on display. Like we have big TVs in all of our offices and we have our scoreboards up there. On our team site, we have scoreboards where we can go in at any time and see real-time live data of where people are at. So for instance, like our managing partners, one of their big jobs is to recruit. And so, if we just waited and said, hey, how many people have you hired? That's the lagging indicator because there's several steps that have to happen before that. So each month when we say how many people have you hired and they're not doing it, we're not driving the right behavior. So we're way behind the 8 ball on that. So what we did was we were like, okay, in order to hire one person, they need to have 5 people show. In order to get 5 people to show for that week, then they need to have spoken to 40 people on the phone. And just those are just some conversion numbers. So basically what we did was as we started to make the scoreboard, first we had hires and then we're like, okay, that's not, why are they still not hitting that goal? Because we're not driving the right behavior. So then we took it back. Okay, let's go to interviews. Wait, why are we still not getting enough interviews? Oh, because they're not talking to enough people on the phone. So then we brought it back. So now we look at all of those behaviors and we focus. So that way, if we're like, they didn't hire, then we can go back and look how many they had the right number of interviews, maybe then that's a conversion problem. Or no, you didn't talk to enough people on the phone. That's the foot on the pedal. Talking to people on the phone is them pushing the gas of their car. Then what they see in their rearview mirror is how many people they actually got to hire from that. And so having those scoreboards is really important.
And that is the leading indicator. And I'll give you an example of Payless Shoes, even though they've gone out of business now. But basically, what they did, there was a time that they had a record year. And what they did was they found out, they said, when we measure people's shoes, we know that more people are going to buy because they're like, okay, they're going to measure their feet. And so what they said is, okay, we're going to track how many shoes that people are measuring their feet. And so they put scoreboards up and they had contests and and that was their record-breaking year. Apparently they stopped doing that because now they're out of business. But at one point, that is what they did. And that was a leading indicator. So sit down with your team and find out what that is.
Yep.
So tip number 9 is in order to scale, you need to be debt-free. And this is really important to me. I've worked really hard and our team has to just build a business with little to no debt. And the only debt we have right now is the mortgage on 2 commercial buildings I own, and I pay double on them to make sure that we're going twice as fast. And this is important because we want to stay as liquid as we can. And the other thing that we had, I think we still have like 1 lease on a copier left.
Yeah.
And that's a perfect example of, even now we were like, why are we leasing these copiers? Let's just get these printers. We were paying literally, like, it was insanity. Some of the copiers were between $600 and $1,000 a month, something like that.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is insane. We ended up buying a printer, a copier that was just fine. It does everything for like $3,000.
Yeah.
And that's it. We're not paying $600 to $1,000. And that was the only thing. Someone had told me a while back, the only thing you should lease is a copier because it breaks down so much. And instead of spending all that money on a copier. And so, yeah, I wouldn't spend $30,000 on a copier. I would spend $3,000 to $5,000. They have them now to where you can get a pretty decent copier for $3,000 to $5,000 and just own it.
Yeah.
What examples can you think of, Heather?
Yeah. Well, this really makes me think of, the housing market took a real big crash between 2007, 2009. But what was really interesting was our company grew during those years. And a lot of that reason was because we didn't have any debt. So we were able to buy up advertising space. So like when the market started to crash, people weren't closing as much. So agents that were kind of like single agents or small teams, they were like, I can't pay for the Zillow anymore. I can't pay for this anymore. I can't pay for this radio ad. So what we did was, because we had the cash flow, we were like, we'll take your Zillow zip codes. We'll take your radio ad. We'll take your space in the market. And so what happened was we started to get all these leads in. So these agents who are starving, they started to come to our company, and we were able to provide them with business. And so what happened was during those years when everybody was seeing such a decline, we closed more houses. We recruited more agents. Our business grew over 400% those years. And that was because we didn't have debt that we were having to pay. We had all of that liquid available to buy up areas. So you want to make sure that anytime that you want to stay as liquid as possible, because there's going to be like some new technology you want to buy. There's going to be some marketing space you want to buy up. As the economy goes up and down, you want to be able to grow in those down times. That's the sign of a really strong business, when even though the economy is going down or your market area is going down, you're able to grow and flourish through that.
All right. Tip number 10 is, anytime you do something more than once, you have to have a system, a process, and a policy in place. Because when you don't have it, it allows for people to constantly ask for exceptions. And when you don't have the process and policies, you're just constantly making decisions. And this causes decision fatigue on items that you don't need to be answering. So you want to have a business that's running like a well-oiled machine. And when you don't have the systems and processes, then we're just constantly asking questions. So think of something, Heather, that we have that we've made more streamlined because of a system and process that we put in place.
Yeah. So, it's funny because I go to Chantel sometimes, and my job is to make the systems and processes. Like if I have to send an email more than once, or I get asked about it more than once, I'm like, okay, we got to have a process for this because I don't want to hear this question again. And so it's funny, even though I'm doing this all day long, every day, sometimes Chantel still has to remind me and say, okay, Heather, that probably means it needs a checklist or it needs something. An example would be, when we have someone that does like making sure, the bills are paid and the bank accounts are up to date and all this stuff. And I was like, I literally have to keep telling her, hey, did you do this? Hey, did you check on that? And she's like, that's because you don't have a process for it, Heather. There needs to be a simple checklist that just reminds them every single day. And so you have to think about these things like, what am I dealing with constantly that I need to just put a process in? And so one of the things we had was, our agents are able to, one of the things we provide for our agents is we provide professional pictures for our listings. And so we had like certain photographers for our agents and that they could use. We had a list of preferred vendors. They all get paid the same amount. And so the agent would like choose one of them. They would invoice us. And it was, once we got the pictures, the admin knew to pay that. And so it was really, really simple. But then what would happen is an agent outside of our network, like would want to use a photographer outside of our network. And so then they would be like, okay, Well, I needed it done quick and I didn't have time to look at the thing. So I just got my friend to do it, but I went ahead and paid for it. And, but it's more than it was. And so can the company reimburse me for it? Please, just this one time. And so then what happens is then their manager would come to me and say, oh, hey, so-and-so needed a photographer. They needed it on a quick dime. They used their friend. Can we reimburse them? And what they don't realize is that we had a system already. We had these people who knew when to invoice us, how to invoice us. The admin knew how to pay them. Now they're like, whoa, this is not in the norm. I have to pay an agent back. And how much am I paying them back? And did they show me an invoice that they paid it? And how do I pay them? And when do I pay them? And all these questions start forming. And then I'm like, stop. This is why we have a system and process in place, because even that just one exception takes you out of your flywheel. It all comes to a screeching halt. They have to stop what they're doing because they have no idea. They know this process, but this is foreign to them. What do I do? Am I allowed to pay this? What should I be doing? And so that creates decision fatigue. That is not a decision anyone should be asking questions on. They shouldn't be doing that. And you want to use your brain power working on bigger things to make bigger, moving your business forward. So you have to take those little things out and say, no, that's not the process. You have to do it. If you want to get your pictures paid for by the company, you must follow this. You can't do this other way. And so just having these systems and processes just helps you run like a well-oiled machine.
Yes. And you want to go with number 11, which says that you want everyone to kind of have the same ideology. And so let me explain what that means. So one of the things that's important for us is for things to look fun, things to be easy. And so what we did was we hired this really amazing web developer, and he was highly sought after. And we kept running into roadblocks with everything he was developing. And then it came with an aha moment. One of our web developers said to us, he writes in a different language than us. Like, it's almost like he's writing in French and we're speaking in English, or vice versa. And he thought, even though he was talented, he wasn't even writing the same code. So he was writing in C++, we were writing in PHP, and it just wasn't working. And he was so professional. He was making things so complicated instead of easy. And one of the things that we are big on is making things easy enough. So one of our ideologies is making things simple enough for a 17-year-old and easy enough for a 70-year-old. 17, if you're 17 or you're 70, you can understand our processes and systems. And he was making it so complicated, no one can understand anything.
Yeah. And that, that makes me think of another story. So one of the things, it's funny because people think, and I know I had to I remember when I first started working here, I'm like, oh, okay, we're going to be really professional. And I'm writing this very professional email. But the thing is we don't want to be super professional. We don't want to be super corporate-y. We want to have a fun environment. So our emails to each other are not always in complete sentences. It doesn't have to be super structured and this is the way it is. And so at one point we were ready, we needed to hire an HR person. And so we found this really, really amazing person, very distinguished HR degree, and he had great corporate HR experience. We loved him. He was a great fit for our culture. He was a super hard worker. Everyone loved him, positive attitude, fun to be around. He was funny, but we kept getting frustrated with how long it would take. We'd be like, hey, can you send out an email about this policy? And it would take for hours. And we were like, why hasn't he sent out this email yet? So for instance, we'd say, hey, can you just send a quick reminder to everyone about dress code? And in our mind, what we wanted was just to say, hey guys, just remember, you can't wear yoga pants in the office. Just, refresh yourselves on the dress code. Look professional at all times. No, it would be 3 hours later, this very technical long email came out. And, I looked at Chantel at one point and I said, in corporate America, everything is very legal looking and very long and difficult to understand. And a lot of times so people will just be like, oh, I'm not reading that. God, I don't even know what it says. And they have really no idea what the policy is. And that wasn't how we wanted that's not how our culture is. We want everything to be transparent, easy, simple. And so we kept getting frustrated with him because we were like, what in the world? And it's because his ideology was very corporate structure, where we are not that way. We want a fun, simple, just flexible, transparent environment. And so we kept kind of hitting that frustration level, even though he was really awesome and super fun and great. We just kept getting frustrated because he didn't have the same ideology as us. And it just wasn't like the right environment for him.
And the best analogy would be the difference between Southwest Airlines
Mm-hmm.
and flying Delta.
Yeah.
Like at Southwest, when they are on the microphone and they're talking about different things, they're getting the message across, but they're hysterical.
Yeah.
And so that's what we want to be. We want to be more of a Southwest fun culture. And it doesn't even match our ideology to have an email about dress code that's, 10 paragraphs long and in so many words, no one can even understand it.
Right. Yeah. Yep.
Right. Let's move on to number 12,
Yep.
which is outsourcing. So what we have decided is that what is not our core competency, you should be outsourcing. And so if someone else can do it cheaper and faster than you, then you need to do that. So let me give you an example. At one point, we had 3 photographers on staff that were paid full time. And they were here so that anytime a listing could come in, they could go and take professional pictures of a listing and have great service to our clients. We even paid for a car. We had the car wrapped. So we were paying for these beautiful cars and paying for the wrapping and paying for oil changes. And what happened was, on a slow month, so like in January, we're, not just, November, December, we're kind of slower. And so we're not getting as many listings coming in because people want to wait till the first of the year. And so we're still paying 3 full-time photographers. So what we decided to do is we decided to outsource this. And so we went to local photographers, negotiated a rate, and only paid them a flat fee for pictures that we're taking at the listing. And this saved us so much time, so much money. And it was because we're only paying for pictures that were taken, and it saved us on payroll costs. And the pictures themselves, taking those pictures, it's not part of our core competency. That was easy for us to go ahead and outsource.
Yeah.
Heather, can you give an example?
Yeah. So I always laugh at where we were and where we've come. So when I first started working here 11 years ago, we literally kept all of our listings on this like spreadsheet, and it had directions, showing directions, like who to call, when they could show the house. And every morning we would print it off, an updated version of it. We'd carry it around with us. We had this very special cell phone for the showing line. And so as all the admin, so there's like 4 or 5 of us, we all were taking care of making sure the scheduling, for clients' listings got shown, because one of our core values was to have somebody live answer the phone at all times. So we did that in-house. So all these people took hours of their day to do this. We had this on this paper. And then once we left for the day, we'd hand it over to the agents and they'd take care of it for the nighttime hours. And so, after a while, we were like, okay, this has to change. One, it's not efficient. It's not up to date. This is taking way too many people's man hours. So we found this company called Showing Time. And basically, we just pay a per listing fee to have a third party handle all of this. It's all on a web platform. Anytime a client may say, oh, change the showing hours, it's just done right away, real-time live updates. They call the client. If the client doesn't want to talk on the phone, they can confirm it via an app, text, email. They get to choose all these different ways, and we don't touch it. We don't hear of showing calls. We don't even know we know what's going on, but we don't have to be involved in it anymore. And this was such a great move for us. One, they work 24/7, so they go with our value of they never miss a call. A live person always answered. You never ever get a voicemail there. And, the clients have the option to do this however they want. And so it was a no-brainer for us to outsource that. And so just finding little things like that of who can do it better, faster, stronger for you, like throw it over to them.
Yeah, and number 13 is to hire managers that follow processes and stop having them ask for exceptions. And what I mean for that is that you want to make sure that your managers are the front line and that they are on board and they have you have processes and they're willing to enforce them. Every time someone comes to them from their office or team, and asking for an exception, we have this one guy on our team who's a leader and we love him. Everyone loves him. He's funny. He's hysterical. He meets all of our core values. But there's one thing we're constantly talking to him about, and that is he wants everyone to love them, him. And so he's constantly like, well, can we make an exception? Can we make an exception? And it's exhausting. And we constantly are talking about that. And number one, every time you make an exception, it has people feel like there's favoritism. You don't want people to feel like there's favoritism in your organization, because making an exception even once can cause people to feel like you're favoring someone, regardless of whether it's, true or not. They're like, well, why are you doing that for them and not doing it for me? So that means that one time can lead to many. And so it's like, they're always like, well, can't we just do this one time? And it's like, no, because once a staff member is allowed to break a rule, there's no guarantee that someone else, and then someone else says, well, why are they getting to do it and I don't get to do it? And then you also, people don't take you seriously because they feel like your word is not there and you're going back on your words. You said this. And so then they're constantly, like my son is a perfect example. If I say to him, you can't have sugar today, you're grounded from sugar. And then he's like, well, can I just have this one cookie? Then it's like I'm making that exception. And then later on that day, he'll say, well, can I have a Pop-Tart? And it just goes on and on.
Yeah, it doesn't stop. And I actually just thought of a really good example of something that happened. So we had an agent whose commission check, the closing company wired it to the wrong account. It didn't come to our account. It went somewhere else. And so they finally got it all sorted out, but it was after the timeline of when we pay commissions. And we pay commissions several times a week, so agents don't have to wait very long for their commission. And so, they said, hey, can we, it wasn't our fault. It wasn't their fault. It got wired to the wrong account, but we have the money now. Can we run a special payroll to pay this person this one check? And I was like, no, because now it costs extra money to run an extra payroll. It's not on payroll day. It's an extra step that the admin has to do. We're not doing it. And then they come back and they're like, but okay, so what if we pay for it? What if we pay for the cost of it? And even though it would have been no extra cost to us, it's still out of the wheelhouse. It's not on payroll day. It's an extra step that they have to make. And if we would have said, fine, go ahead and do it now, just like Chantel said, it opens the door. So because once you make one exception, it just pries the door open, because now they're gonna be like, well, last time you let us pay for it. And next thing you know, we're running payroll every single day. It's just crazy. So you have to really stick to your processes and have them stick to your processes. And they have to be able to do that on the front line. So we're not getting, you as the upper management aren't getting questioned every other day on what we should, can we please make an exception for this? Can we please make an exception for that?
So good. So number 14 is automate everything you can. We really try to look at everything that's done manually and say, how do we automate this? And if it's automated, you won't forget about it. And it's always running, and I don't have to rely on an employee to get it to me. So for example, I see certain reports every single day, and once a week, I want to get a snapshot of where we are, how we're doing it. So I had our amazing web guy on staff. He created these reports and they send out automatically. So let's say we want to do a ratified contract contest every single month. I used to have our admin go in, pull the data, sort it, color code it, make it look nice. And what happened was it took a lot of time. And so now I said, nope, we're going to have this. We have an API that collects all the data, and we pull it, and it has an email that's sent out automatically.
Yeah.
So Heather, what else can you think of that we do automatically?
Yeah, we really try to automate everything. We like to sit in departments and see what are they doing, and how can I take any type of manual, anything they're doing manually has to go. And it doesn't, even if you're like, well, I'm a small company, I don't have a web developer, I don't have all this. That's okay. There are products out there that do this for you for really low cost. So an example would be, we have an inside sales department. We get a lot of email leads in every single day. So what was happening was the email was coming in, the ISA was having to copy the email, paste it in, write in notes. And I looked at them, and they're doing this hundreds of times a day. And I was like, no, we are not doing this anymore. This is crazy that you're manually copying and pasting and putting it in. I went online, I found this program for $200 a month, maximum. It literally reads the email when it comes in, grabs the information I tell it to, and puts it in my system. There's systems like they're out there all over the place. And I could set it up myself. I'm not a web developer. I don't have to write any code. It has it all there for you. You just follow the instructions. You tell it what you want it to pull. It puts it in there. That has saved us hundreds of hours every single month for $200 or less. And there's systems like this you can do, looking in your everyday And in your everyday like activities, if someone is doing something manually, you have to automate it. They should not be doing anything manually anymore.
Absolutely. And number 15 is that you need to get your niche, figure out what your niche is, and stay in that. And what it is it's counterintuitive to go into a small niche. It feels limiting. Everyone wants a big funnel and lots of clients, and no one wants to turn any client away. But the opposite is true. The more well-defined you are and the more of an expert you are, people will look at you an expert and they want to come see you. Let me give you an example. An example is cancer. Let's say someone said, I don't want to just do breast cancer or prostate cancer. I want to be able to do all cancers. Well, if you have breast cancer, like if I had breast cancer, Lord willing, I don't have it, but let's say this, I want to see somebody who is a breast cancer specialist. I don't want to see a doctor that just does everything. So you need to find your niche, and everyone wants to be so broad because they don't want to lose business. But the problem is they will lose business because of it. So I will give you an example. Let's say there's a surgeon, right? If you have a surgeon, then you go, okay, you have your category, your specialty, and then your niche. So for example, your category might be they're a surgeon. The specialties, they're a plastic surgeon. Their niche is they specialize in boob jobs, right? So for my real estate company, what happened was at one point we had this guy who wanted to do property management. He was like, please, let's do property management. And I said, no, we don't need to do property management. We ended up doing it, and it was a disaster. And for me, like with my book that I wrote, like my category, specialty, and niche, it goes like this. My category is health. My specialty is weight loss. My niche is intermittent fasting. And why did my book do so well? My book was on the top 1% of all books on Amazon. And the reason why was because it was on intermittent fasting. That's a very small niche. And so anytime someone put in intermittent fasting, my book popped up. Well, if I just did a book on weight loss, it would have just gotten hidden in everything. But because I went so niche, it was really, that's what made it successful. And, talk about how JMac wanted to do property management, and he was like, let's do property management, and how it turned out to be a nightmare.
Yeah. So basically, the other part of it too is that it messes up your systems, because that's when you have systems for a niche, it runs very smoothly. When you throw another like wheel in it, it has to go a step further. So basically, like our niche is residential real estate. We can sell and do that with our eyes closed. I mean, that runs like seamlessly. Property management is different. And the problem is that it is a whole different system. You have to have a whole different technology system. You have to have all this stuff. And so, top agents, we always want to cater to our top agents. We're like, no problem. I personally learned all about it, set up systems. We paid all this money. We did all this stuff. And what we found was that we finally sat down with him at one point and we said, let me ask you this question. How much money will you make if you sell one house? And he's like, my average commission's $10,000 for one house. How many houses do you sell a month? I don't know, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, and how much are you making on one property management deal? Oh, I don't know, $300. How much of your time are you spending on property management? Oh, I'm spending over 50% of my time right now. The tenants are calling me, the landlords are calling me. I'm trying to set up, someone's toilet broke at 2 a.m. I'm trying to set up the plumber to get out there, And so we looked at them and I said, now you're a money person. Does this make sense to you? And they're like, no. And, and I said, listen, our niche is residential real estate. We know how to do this so well that it takes little effort from you to make a big return. Property management is not our wheelhouse. That you have to have a much bigger portfolio, and that has to be something that you're just doing all the time, churning, have a rate system set up for it. that it just doesn't make sense for you to do that. And so we had to kind of let them see that from the big picture before, so they could kind of bring it back together. And then we ended up, selling that division off and just staying with residential real estate. And that he makes tons of money in the residential real estate world.
Well,
That's his wheelhouse.
We're also doing it with the commercial real estate now. And honestly, we really shouldn't be. Like,
Yeah.
we should not be doing commercial real estate. That's not in our wheelhouse. He does an amazing job at it.
Yep.
It goes back to what's our niche, and we really should be staying in that. So
Yeah.
I hope you guys have enjoyed these top tips, and I'm going to end with one last thing. It's called the 1 to 3% rule. And, I was taking a tennis lesson yesterday with a instructor that he taught the top people. Like, he was in the French Open himself. He helped with Nadal and Djokovic and all these top people. And there's one guy, I can't even remember, Andy Roddick is who his main person was that he coached. And he said that, listen, out of his words, he said, Djokovic is only winning between 51% and 53% of his games. Nadal is winning 51% to 53% of his games. And he said, now, all the other people who are in the top, let's say out of the top 1,000 people who are in professional tennis, he's like, they're still winning 49% of their games. The difference is that Djokovic and Nadal are winning 51% or 53%. It's only 1 to 3% better than all the other players. They're almost as good, but he's being consistent at winning 1 to 3% better. And so my suggestion is that, like, find these things, figure out how you can be consistent at all of these things all the time, just by 1%. And that's really the key.